All right, everybody. Well, tonight we're going to do something special. We're going to talk with mothers and how they lost their loved ones and how mediumship has helped them. And it just so happens to be the day that my sister passed away 2 years ago, and my mother is here to join us. And not just specifically mediumship in general, but people who have become mediums themselves. So, if you would like to get started, would you like to share your experience, Cheryl?
Sure. My son Dane died 7/7/17. It was what I consider an accident. He and a couple people had decided to trip on acid for the first time ever. And he had taken a bad trip during the day. I had gotten home from work, seemed a little bit off. I wasn't quite sure. But about 8:45, 8:50 that night, I heard this weird noise coming from his room. And I went running upstairs, and he was dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It was devastating because the first thing you think of is, and I didn't know he tripped on acid, obviously. It was like, oh my God, how could I not have seen that he was depressed? How could I have missed this? I'm a nurse practitioner in the emergency department, so I'm a medical professional. This is what I do all the time. How could I miss every single sign? And all that's going through my head, and then why, and this kind of stuff. So, as everything unfolded, police came, the coroner came, forensics came, this type of thing. And when it was all said and done, it's the next day, I can remember just laying in bed, and it was the first thing I thought was, get out of bed. And it was an effort, but that's the first thing I thought, just get out of bed. And I got out of bed, and then I didn't eat that day. Probably didn't drink a lot either. I sat outside a lot. It was beautiful, July, summer. And just then, dragonflies started to fly in front of my face. And I had always enjoyed dragonflies. I had like little things in my garden that were dragonfly related. So when they were just, again, flying around, it wasn't unusual to see some flying here and there, but they were literally in front of my face. And the people were there looking at me like, what is going on? And then I realized it's Dane. Dane is sending these to me. And then at his funeral, I had walked around the room, and there was, he always liked those things that had like the plastic needle things that went in, you put your hand in it and it would make an impression. And I walked in the back room, and they had taken his handprint and put it in there, but in his handprint, there was a smiley face. And I knew that that was from him as well. And then about a month later, my sister had come back to visit, and the sky in my room just got black with flashes of stars almost. And then I put my kind of arm in the air, and I kind of moved it around, and all the stars kind of started swirling around my hand, and they started hitting me almost like ice, like sleet would hit. That's how it felt. And then the next thing that happened was about a month later, he came to me. And it's what I call visitation. It's different than a dream. And he was like literally there. And I can remember going over to him, putting my arms around him, thinking I'm going to go right through him. But he was solid, and he was crying. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And that was in September. And then October, a friend of mine had gone. She was she worked with me. And she said, I'm just going to a medium. And it happened to be Erica on Monday, and we had worked together Sunday. I said, oh, that's awesome. I said, tell me how it goes. So Wednesday I go back to work, and she's standing there at my desk, and I had forgotten all about it. And she says, oh, remember I told you I was going to that medium? I'm like, yeah, what happened? She goes, you're not going to believe what happened. She says, just as I'm sitting down, she says, who do you know had a child, a son, who died, late teens, early 20s, tragically? The number 777 comes to me. And he says, you work with his mom. Well, she immediately goes to somebody else that had lost a child about a year earlier. And she says, no, we don't work together anymore. And she says, no, he's kind of getting out of it. He says, you know my mom. And it's 777. So basically, it was I just had to get to her. And so that was Wednesday. And on Friday, I met Erica Marks for the first time. Of course, first time I'd ever been to a medium, and I go in thinking there's going to be a crystal ball, and all the incense and all the stuff that you think movie wise, is going to be there. And she's just, talks to me, say, hi, how are you? Gives me a hug. And she's pregnant at that point. She says, hey, have a seat on the couch. And then I thought, oh, here's the time she's going to start trying to get information from me. And then she says, are you ready to go? I said, sure. She just kind of looks up, and then she says, okay, I have three people here. And she just starts giving me this reading. And I had no idea what to expect. It just kind of became like an organic thing that we just did. And I was there for about 2.5 hours, and I felt so good afterwards because Dane had come through. I felt like he was talking to me. Everything she said is how he would say it. She described him. It was just really amazing. And then I went and saw her again in December of that same year, so December of 2017. And then in February of 2018, I was working in the ER, and a friend of mine's husband had died. So I go over to her to give her a hug, and I put my arm on his, or my hand on his arm, and I just start talking to her. And this whole time I'm like, you guys had a great love, and you're always together, and how's your son? Did you tell him yet? No, he's in Florida, this kind of stuff. So we chatted for about 10 minutes, gave her a hug, and I left. That night, about 5:30 in the morning, I guess it would be the next morning, my entire vision just was spirit, and I call them a whole bunch of like masked spirits, and it just lit up my room, lit up my vision. It was scary, for lack of a better term. But since then, I've gotten in touch with Erica, and had another session, and I've learned things. I'm reading like crazy, practicing. And, of course, I don't feel like I'm that good at it, but the biggest thing is when Dane comes to me, and he comes to me a lot. Just even the last couple of days, he's come through to me. I had a hard time putting up the Christmas tree, and on my way to work, I said to him, Bud, if you're going to be here tonight with me while I put the Christmas tree up, play "Oh Christmas Tree" on the radio. And I went to work and nothing, and I came back, and just before I was getting home, on the radio is "Oh Tannenbaum," and then it's that Snoopy version of it where it's the Snoopy and Red Baron, and just like that's what my son would have done. He would have messed around like he was serious, and then made a joke out of it. So it was perfect, and so that's something that just happened for me. So I was certainly a skeptic, a non-believer, until all of these things happened to me, and it's not coincidence. It's real. And when you read about people you can develop if you keep trying and practicing and everything, it is true. You can. And it's just an amazing thing that's happened for me. It's given me peace. It really has.
It's a really beautiful story. And, it's very interesting how me and you met. And we were taking Erica's class, and he came to me like an hour before class started, which, is typically how that happens, but I didn't even know, at that time what it was. I was actually, it's very funny because I was doing a reading. I put my hand on these tarot cards that my late sister gave me many years ago to try to get a reading off of it. And I'm like looking at this like lady who's headless holding her head, and I see this vision of this boy with glasses like in my left, and he's just like looking at what I'm looking at, and he looks back at me just like, what's inside your head, dude? And and then at the end of the class, me and you did a one-on-one session, and you're like, someone's standing behind you. I'm like, I don't know who that is, but I had this feeling on the back of my head. And then Erica came in, and I was like, Erica, who's behind me? She goes, oh, that's Dane. And then, without expressing all the details of the reading, then, he seemed like a really sweet boy,
Yeah, he certainly is.
Really good kid. And one part of this meeting tonight is not only how mediumship helps people cope with their lost loved ones, but specifically people who become mediums. And it seems like that event in your life actually helped you become a medium and open up some doorways, and now you are connected with your son through spirit, which is really awesome. And that brings me to my next guest, who is my mother, and this is the day that my sister passed away 2 years ago. And me and my mother together, and my other sister, took this journey together this year and became mediums ourselves. And I feel like my sister was kind of in the background pushing us all together. And my mom has a lot of experiences with mediums during the whole year after that. So, Mom, if you want to come on and share with us your experience.
Okay, so Brittany was my daughter, and Damien's sister. A few years before she passed, she started struggling with a drug addiction. I always knew from when I first had children that I would lose one of them before I passed. One would go before me. I didn't think it was going to be Brittany, but unfortunately, that's how it played out. I told Brittany before she passed away that I knew she was going to die. And these are some of the things that, have kind of happened to me before, making this journey to actually become a medium. So after Brittany passed, and like Damien said, we all just kind of started down this path kind of separately, but without knowing the others were doing it. And we joined on this path, and we, started to learn about shamanism and spirituality and mediumship. And one of the things I feel that helps with that, having that, journey and that information, is the hardest part, the part that makes you grieve the most, is when you lose a loved one and they're no longer in this reality with you. So you feel like you've lost them forever. And with spirituality and mediumship, what you learn is you lose their carnated body, but you never truly lose their soul. And that in the case of my daughter, I knew it was a much better place for her than what she was living in this life. There was no more pain for her, and there was no more sorrow. And, it was a release. And what we kind of learned through learning everything that we learned with the mediumship is, we choose our life path before we're born. And I now realize that maybe that was the path she chose to learn whatever lesson she needed to learn. And maybe, she knew that she wouldn't have a full life. So that gives you some comfort. But in actually being a medium, some of the things that you get to do, and is to provide healing messages to other people who have lost loved ones. And that is gratifying and healing in itself.
Yeah, it's a really truly beautiful thing, and you're speaking about shamanism. Me, you, and our other guest, Elisa, we all took the shamanic journey, the path together, and in taking that path, we are now certain that loved ones go to a very good place, after they pass. So that's also something that's very reassuring to understand that they are light and love, and they're always watching over us. They're always there, and I believe that it helps so much with grieving. And I highly recommend anyone who is having a hard time coping with the loss of a loved one, that they should seek out some guidance, and my sister, which I just learned today, actually, our next guest, Lisa, met Lisa's son who passed. And, Lisa, of course, like I said, took this journey with us through the shamanic path. And Lisa, if you would like to come on and share your experiences with us.
Sure. I agree with Kathy when she said that, we pick our paths before we come here. And it took me a long time to get my head around that. My son, he passed in a motorcycle accident, and I had a friend that was a medium, and it was, I believe it, but it was more entertainment for me. And then after my son passed away, it was necessary that I know that he was okay. So that was really the only thing that brought me comfort, was to hear that he was okay, because, it's unnatural order for your kid to go before you into the unknown, So that really was the only thing that brought me any comfort. And it took me a long time to get my head around just the missing his physical body. But I noticed signs, and like signs from him early on, and I was very lucky that I noticed that. I don't believe anything is coincidence. You really have to pay attention, and a lot of parents have said, "Oh, well, I don't get any signs from my kid or anything," but I think that they do, and they're just grieving so hard that they're not paying attention to the small things. And I think mediums can really help you connect, like telling you specific ways that your family member is trying to communicate with you, so that you can pay attention to those things more. You know what to look for, I guess. But it has definitely given me a firm belief in this: the soul lives on, and this body is just our vehicle while we're here. And um, I've met so many other parents. My son passed 7 years ago. I've um, tried to encourage other parents to talk to mediums, because, like I said, that's the only thing that really helped me. It brought me any comfort. And it's taken a long time to, get your mind around it, basically. And I've met a lot of other people and sharing stories, and you can't make this stuff up. One sign that kind of stands out in my memory was a couple years ago, my son's grandfather passed away, and I was talking to him in my head on the way to go to the store, actually. And I was like, well, if granddad is with you, can you give me a sign that he's okay and he's with you? And like 20 minutes later, I pull into the store's parking lot, and I'm like, oh, good, a parking space up close. And I pull into the spot, and the car in front of me has grandpa on the license plate. And I'm like, wow. I mean, he called him granddad, but you can't make that up. I mean, that's clear a sign that granddad was with him. So just stuff like that. I mean, I didn't feel him around me. I would kind of feel his presence in the car, but that was really the only time I felt my son's spirit around me. And I've gotten a little better at that over the years, but it wasn't as easy for me as a lot of other people. But I mean, it's definitely real, and I encourage people to talk to mediums. And like you said, it when you believe it, and you believe that everyone has this ability, um, it opens your mind to, I guess when you're more open to it, you're able to do it more. It's basically what I've learned.
And
Anyway,
thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it's crazy that we all came on this path together, but we could consider ourselves fortunate because not only does it help us heal with the losses that we've suffered, but we can also pass on healing messages to other people, and that's actually the goal of a medium. Is something we do a lot of, like, you go through like the descriptions and the name, and the spirit shows you a lot of images and a lot of feelings and stuff like that, and you relay that to the person you're reading. But the end result is really the healing message, you know, and I believe that it really changes people's lives, you know, and we're just very fortunate to be gifted with that, you know, and I believe that there's a lot more other people out there and maybe they'll be drawn to watch this and they'll either seek out mediumship and they might even find that they have the ability, you know. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody and we can, if anybody would like to add anything to the discussion, you know.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really feel like helping other parents and being a support system for other parents that have lost kids is helping me to heal personally. So yeah, it helps you to help other people because you know what pain they're going through and you know that they're suffering. So you want to help other people to, you know, to realize that, you know, they're still alive. They're just not in their bodies.
The other thing I've noticed too is that when you start talking about this stuff, people will start talking to you about it too. And it's like, well, guess what? I had this weird thing happen. And oh, you know what? Let me tell you about my grandmother, this kind of stuff. So I noticed that more and more people actually have things like this happen to them, but either they make it a coincidence or they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to, think that there's something wrong with them or that people are going to laugh at them or think that they're kind of crazy or that kind of thing. So I think it's important that we open dialogue. And then, it's funny how the world of child loss is bigger than you realize till, when you become a part of it. And that's how I met Erica first, and then she introduced me to Lisa and, Amanda, and, and it just kind of exponentially grows. And it's been so helpful, but it's amazing that if you don't talk about it, how many people would remain silent.
Right. And it doesn't matter which way your child passed, in what manner they passed. It's just the same loss and the same guilt and the same, what could I have done different? We all still feel that way no matter how they passed,
Mm-hmm.
That is so true. I think that when you realize there's other parents out there, mothers that have lost a child too, then you have some understanding because it's very difficult to understand how it feels to lose a child until you've actually lost one yourself, and you become a part of that club that nobody wants to join. I mean, there is no name for a parent who's lost a child. I mean, if you lose a spouse, you become a widow. If you lose a parent, you become an orphan, but there's no name for when you lose a child. So, it's important that, there's other people out there, and mediumship kind of help with that too, because it helps you to realize that, they're safe. And that's all you want. You want to know that they're happy and they're safe.
Right.
And that gives you comfort.
The most important thing that Erica said, I can remember sitting down, and as she started, and I just started crying, and I said, the thing is, I don't want to say goodbye. I don't want to let him go. And she goes, you don't have to let him go. And that was like the best thing she ever said. I'm like, what do you mean I don't have to let him go? She's like, no, you don't have to let him go. He's always going to be with you. And that right there was just the weight of the world was off of me. And I never thought of how impactful that was going to be for me.
Right. You just you start to realize, okay, well, I may not be able to physically hug them anymore, but my daughter came to me in a dream and we had this hug that when I woke up, I was just so happy. I wanted to have that dream over again and, over and over, because I could feel the warmth and the love that came from that hug in my dream. Mm-hmm. So it's just, your relationship becomes in a different manner if you realize that they are still with you.
Right. And I kind of feel that those types of dreams that you have, those dreamlike things that are real, are more visitations. Mm-hmm. you know, more so because I have dreams of Dane, and it's funny because I'll be like, buddy, I want to snuggle, and in my dream, like within a few days, it may not be that night, but within a few days, he'll come to me in a dream, and he'll be either, you know, the 2 or 3 year old Dane. Sometimes he's the 8 or 9 year old Dane. Sometimes he'll be the 10, 11 Dane, and sometimes I'll say to him, buddy, I want my teenager back, you know, and then he'll come to me as a teenager, you know, and he'll just have his, he was hysterical, so he would, you know, he'll just do something funny. Like he was one day, he was putting Dixie cups into a backpack, and he picked it up and threw it over his shoulder, and they all, like, of course all the water ran out onto his butt, and he goes, well, that wasn't a good plan, was it? And you know, we just laughed, you know. So that's the kind of stuff that if you're open to it, you know, and you just like let things happen, they will, and they'll come to you over and over again. It's just amazing.
And they still have their same personality. I mean,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
awesome. It's comforting to know that they're kind of teaching us now.
Mhm.
They have become the teachers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny because my father, who passed like 25 years ago, it's whenever we do like group readings, he always shows up. He's always got to be there. In class, our mentor has actually had to move him away from me because he's always standing at my shoulder. But he has actually woken me up one night. He called my name in the middle of the night and it woke me up out of a dead sleep. So, I mean, if that's not proof right there. And it's funny little things like that he's done over the years.
And I think, you know, Damien was talking about like, you know, signs and things like that. You have to really, truly be open, because it's not always going to be clairvoyant, which is kind of what I am mostly. It's not always going to be that. It's going to be just, like I said, like a music. Like last night, for instance, I was up in Dane's room watching TV, and I happened to watch the Christmas Chronicles. It was a movie. It was last year. It was with Kurt Russell, and it's just like another one of those Christmas things. And the kids are walking by this church, and it's very faint in the background, and they stop and they pause and they listen to the music that comes out. They said, oh, this was Dad's favorite. And I listened. You can barely hear it, but it's Oh Christmas Tree. And I thought, there you go again, Dane, you know. So it's those kinds of subtle things that you just have to be open to and kind of know. The one thing, you know, when I read about like signs and things like that, the one big thing though is to, like, if you see a feather or something like that, but it's under a bird's nest, well, probably not the case, you know. But if you see a feather, you know, in the middle of a floor that you just vacuumed, well, that's pretty significant, you know. So I think the thing is kind of knowing what's real and what isn't. And I always laugh because I always say, I say Dane does everything, you know. Dane changes the weather, Dane whatever. And I can remember my other son says, Mom, why do you think Dane does all of this, you know? And I'm like, all right, well, okay, I'll lay off. He's probably not doing it. I'm just making believe he is. So
You can even ask for signs. I mean, it's,
yeah,
you can ask for signs, and if you're patient and wait and just be open to it, they'll send you the sign you asked for.
mm-hmm.
Well, what's kind of funny is today, I mentioned to my boyfriend we'd seen a silver Volkswagen, which was what my son had before he got the motorcycle, and we just found out that Brittany is the one that bought his silver Volkswagen. Well, I saw 3 of them today, and it's an older model, so I mean that's a common car, but to have those 3 vehicles stand out to me today when we were going to be doing this tonight, I kind of felt like that was a little hello from them, you know.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I really feel like our kids have all met on the other side. They have their little group, and they're probably like, hey, let's get our parents together so they can you know, have
Yeah,
some
it's no
support.
coincidence. Yeah, there are no coincidences, you know, and it's
Yeah.
a coincidence that we all know each other, you know, and we've actually all know Erica, which unfortunately she can't be here tonight because she's sick. But it's crazy how we all met like that, and you know, Erica's actually like another child to my mother, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, we've known each other for a long time. Which actually, Erica and my sister met in high school, you know, and but it's just really nice, you know, to be able to give people healing messages, you know, about their loved ones. And you know, like I said before, you're, you know, very fortunate to be so connected to spirit that you are there with your loved ones, and anybody out there who maybe hasn't gone to a medium or isn't as aware that your loved ones are always there, and they're in such a good place, and they're always watching every step you take, you know what I mean? And they just really want what's for your highest good, and they act as like guides and protectors, and they just they don't want you to live the rest of your life grieving, you know, in sadness, you know. They really want you to get on with your life, and you know, and the more you become aware, you understand that they are always there, you know, and you've been connected through lifetimes, many lifetimes, you know. So it just helps, it just helps get over the fact that they're gone, knowing that they're in such a good place, you know.
Yeah, I can't say enough about mediums. Like I said, they know things that, you know, no one else could possibly know. One of the mediums I very much respect is Luann, and she told me that my son says, thank you for the prayers, like including him in the prayers. Well, I'm not real religious, and my son did not know that I say nightly prayers, but even after his passing, I still, you know, ask for protection for his soul. And how would anyone know that I pray, or that I even still pray for a child that's deceased? You know what I mean?
It's very
So,
funny how spirit works, you know. They're always, you know, it's, I was just discussing this earlier with Cheryl, that when you are a medium, spirits like come in before, like if you were trying to do a mediumship reading that day, spirits are coming in. Spirits are
yeah.
coming in before you even know if you are trying to do a mediumship reading that day. And it always just kind of like puts it in the path that you need to connect with somebody because this spirit came in. You know, I did a reading the other day, and the spirit came to me, and I had no intention of doing anything that day, you know, and the spirit came to me, and I just put this thing on Facebook, and this person posted back, and I was like, I know that's going to be the person who replies to my post. And then like an hour later, we're doing a reading, and it's
Wow.
who's connected to her. And you know, you get that all the time. It's just like with Cheryl, you know, with your son, he came, you know, before this class started, that me and you were doing together. It's just so funny how that works, that it's like there are no coincidences. People get put into our path that is meant to be, you know. And a lot of people who are struggling with the loss of their loved ones, you know, specifically their children as well, like they will be put in your path, and they will come to you. You know, I get that all the time. You know, people that I know, their spirits will come to me all the time. And if they don't come to me, if we're in like a group, they're coming to other people, you know. But it's very nice. I'm even through this process, you know, my dad was adopted. So he never knew his family, and going through this whole process, I've kind of gotten to know my dad's side of the family, and there's like, you know, like 11 siblings and stuff. So it was very kind of hard to figure out who it was at first, but now it's like I've talked to a grandfather that I've never met before, and some aunts and uncles and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool how that works, you know. You know, and Cheryl, you're a very good medium. Mom, you're a very good medium, even though both you say you're not. You know. And Lisa, I don't know. Lisa, do you do any mediumship specifically? Because I know you're a shaman.
A little bit. I'm not too confident in it, but I'm always amazed when things come through and they're accurate. Like it's still just, the whole thing just still amazes me. You know, I'm in love with the miracle of it. I will say something I have learned, that you know, time is different on the other side. And that's another thing that's kind of helped me to grieve is, you know, initially I thought, well, it can't come soon enough, that my time is over on this earth. But then I realized I need to just live my life on this earth, because it's, you know, it's short in the scheme of things, and I'll be there soon enough. You know, time is different over there, and they know what's going on with us, and you know, I guess
Yeah.
it's not the same. It's not as long for them.
Yeah, probably most of us have gone through so many lifetimes in the spirit realm and as human beings, and we might show up as different, looking different, to different people, and through so many lifetimes. And that is actually interesting you said that, because Cheryl, you told me something that was interesting, that you and your son were connected and you did some past life regression, and you weren't always mother and son, but you were always, in a family. I think one time you were telling me that you and your son were actually brothers in a war.
Right. Yeah. Like the medieval time, we had the helmets on with like the plate, the nose plate thing, and so I couldn't even tell you what era it was in, but the one I do remember is that I was in France outside of Versailles, and I was holding him in my arms. I was his mother at that point, and Bonaparte went by on his horse, and Dane is like, Bonaparte, Bonaparte, kind of thing, as Napoleon's riding by on his horse. And so it's really interesting. We've been together numerous times in the past, and it's funny, people talk about time. I can remember like the very day after he died, I thought, oh my gosh, here's day one. And the people, there's that saying out there, time heals all wounds. All I thought was, oh my God, it's taking me further away from him. This is one day away from him. And as I go 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, my memories are going to be different. They're going to be faded. It's only going to be what I see in pictures, or something jars my memory. It's not going to be so easily attained. And that was my big fear too, was, because even my friend says, are you afraid you're not going to remember your son? I'm like, yes, that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid I'm not going to remember him. And, and people don't understand it until a death happens, and then you go further and further away, and you start realizing, yeah, you do start remembering them by instances that you talk about or pictures that you see. You remember exactly what happened at the picture, but did you remember what happened before the picture or after the picture? You don't. You start losing that, and that's my biggest fear. So what I find about the mediumship and just being able to connect to him is that our lives are still going on together. It's just a different realm. He's not with me physically, but we're still going. We're still making memories, So just like when he was 2, and and he's 10 now, kind of thing. And then you start thinking you don't remember all that stuff that is vividly either. But now it's the same concept. It's just where I thought it was like a finite thing. Now I'm making different kinds of memories in a different time frame, different realm, kind of thing.
With Brittany, we hadn't seen her for the last prior to her passing. We hadn't seen her for 3 years. She was down in Florida. She wasn't living a good life, but we hadn't seen her until we had her body brought back up here. So I felt that guilt, not only of just the normal guilt of losing a child, but just having not seen her for so long. I don't know if it helped with my grief or made it worse. Sometimes it was a little both. But again, it was that same feeling like, okay, every day I'm going to make sure I just make myself take a shower, because I know if I can get through a day will become a week, a month. And before you know it, here we are 2 years later. And, there may be that little bit of grief there, but there's also that knowledge that she is still with me. And, really I can talk to her anytime I want. It's just a different way of talking to her.
It brings like a good message for not those who hold up, I got something in here. My chest is getting tight. But not only for spirits, in the spirit realm, but with my sister's passing, I always had a lot of guilt and grief, because before she left, we were not on like great terms, and we were like best friends. We would always live together as adults and stuff like that. And when she passed, everything, I started going back through all like these messages we had and all this stuff, and I'm like, so many things are so trivial. It just really it's really, in the grand scheme of things, being with people who are here that you're close to, that are living, you can, I feel like mediumship or helping with spirits, like once they're gone, so many things that you might have difficulties with that person, it's just like those things are meaningless. You know what I mean? And you just want to remember how special your relationship was, you know? So it gives me like a good lesson in life to try my best to treat people here and now, you know, a lot better than maybe I would have in the past. You know what I mean? Like, just a lot of things can just be thrown away. You know what I mean? A lot of stuff just is meaningless, a lot of fighting and bickering and stuff like that, you know? And it's because when someone's gone, then, you know, especially like, you know, me and my sister, who the last time I spoke with her was just, we were fighting, you know, and then I saw her body on a, you know, before we cremated her at a funeral home, you know, and I was just like, that really hit me really hard. You know, it was very difficult to deal with that. You know, I just didn't even want to live anymore for a couple months. You know, and then I went through a pretty rough year, and then, you know, this year, I realized that there was this path that I was supposed to take my entire life. You know, and that helped me a lot. You know, not only with the shamanism, and I was like, you know, I became a shaman, and it actually got rid of a lot of my shadow work and help, you know, just help me become a better person energetically and help me understand things in a different perspective. And I took these courses and I was like, whatever, I don't really want to be a psychic or a medium. I don't even know what to do with this stuff. But then I took it and I ended up loving it, you know, because when you connect to a crossed over soul, not only the healing message for that person, but energetically, it makes you feel so good. It's like a payment for service. You know, it's like you get this like rush, like this high of energy, you know, especially after a medium session is over. And it's like, oh, you know, you feel so good. So that also makes me feel good, because it's like, I know feeling their energy feels so nice, you know, that is where they are. They're in this, you know, very loving, very, you know, very good energy all the time. You know,
I know you do it once and it becomes addicting. You just want to keep doing it because it feels so, I mean, it's such a loving thing. And then when you help someone, you give them a healing message, that even makes it like, it's like a double payment.
Yeah, it's like a privilege that they chose you to come to, you know, to give their message to.
And they do, you know, you made a good point, because they choose, because we don't choose who comes through to us.
Right.
Know? It's like I was explaining, like, you know, just one example before, we kind of just get directed in, you know, to these people and by these spirits. If you were to come and ask me, like, can I talk to my sister or my grandmother or my grandfather or something like that, it doesn't necessarily work like that. It's usually the spirit with the high, like the message with the highest good at that moment will come to you, you know, but you keep working.
Right.
You're going to get all of them eventually, you know.
No, and then you have some comical times. I was actually the sitter, and the medium who was reading for me, we were at Erica's, and it was her mediums needed volunteer sitters to practice with. And what it was, she had my mother and my aunt trying to come through at the same time, and they were actually arguing with each other who could go. So, I mean, so the personalities don't change just because they crossed over.
Me, you, Erica, Lisa, and my other sister, Crystal, we all went to one of Erica's favorite mediums' gallery reading. And of course, Lisa's son came through, and then grandma actually came through. And you speaking about a funny experience, and my grandma is just like this with her personality. She comes in, she doesn't come to a lot of people all the times. Usually she's more quiet, but when she comes in, she's like kind of sassy, and she just like gives you this quick thing, and then she's gone. You know, she's like, she came in and she's like, yeah, the cemetery, and the medium described the cemetery. It's Lake Cemetery, you know, and it's like, yeah, it's been 9 years, and you guys still haven't buried me, because we were, you know, we're going to bury her ashes with my grandfather. And she's like, yeah, it's been 9 years. You guys still haven't buried me. And then she's gone. you know,
she didn't even say cemetery. She kept referencing lake, and Crystal had to look it up and realize that it was a cemetery that my father was buried in, and that's what she was referencing. Because I'm asking the psychic, I'm like, does she have a particular lake she'd like to go to, or is there one she wants to give us? And it was basically, well, figure it out.
One of my so Erica actually did a reading for me like 3 years ago. And I've always been open minded to this stuff, but it's like whatever. And she's like, your grandfather's showing me an image of you in a car and you're sleeping and he's sitting next to you. And remember when I wrecked my truck, I fell asleep. I fell asleep and I was just about to hit this pole, going fast down, Route 4, sleeping, early in the morning, and I wake up, I like jolt, and I wake up right before I hit this pole. I just like steer up, like away from it as hard as I can. And then a couple years after that, she tells me, she gives me that message, and I'm like, wow, I start reflecting back into my life and realize all these times, because I was a reckless wild one, all these times that I should have died, or situations that most people do die in, and that these feelings always came over me, and this calmness, and like something just intervenes, and I'm sure a lot of that was my grandfather. He's probably like, come on, man, you better straighten up and act mature, because I'm tired of saving your ass all the time,
Right. That's not your contract time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, man, you're making this hard on us.
Yeah, when you wreck a scooter at 65 miles an hour and hit your head and don't die, that's some intervention right there.
Yeah. And of course, it still kept going on until, I matured, and learned a lot more in life. But that, messages like that, it really helped me out a lot. And I'm like, and then, she told me a lot about my grandfather, and the way that she was describing it is that he was always looking over me. He's like standing over me, like he's like inside my head. He knows what I'm thinking, and she's pulling that out of, from him and relaying the message to me, and that made me feel really good. And I started taking a whole new appreciation for my grandfather, and I feel like he is one of my protectors, that he's always making sure that I'm on the right path. And, I'm actually, I come to realize this year too, is that inside my mind, it's one of the things that I'm always asking for guidance with a lot of things, and he's always there answering, so we're having conversations that's steering me in a path that's for my highest good, even though I'm hard-headed and it took a while. So.
It's interesting. You guys have talked about like the soul journeys and stuff, and that's something that maybe people don't understand, is that you have a contract before you come here, and you do have like certain things you're supposed to learn. The earth is a big classroom. And I can remember having a recurring dream that I never finished my high school English class, over and over and over and over again. Well, when Dane died, then I never had that dream anymore. So it's kind of like, was that part of it, where he died before he finished his high school, because he died, he would have been a senior and he never finished high school, so to speak. And so once that happened, I never had that again. But the other thing that I think I'm learning from this is unconditional love and forgiveness. It's amazing what you have to learn. And Damien, you referred to the fact that, had I known, it's like hindsight is 2020. It's always 2020. So we know, now it's obvious to me. But the whole point is that we're supposed to learn things while we're here, and hopefully you don't screw it up over and over again. And it's funny because sometimes they give you messages and you ignore it and you ignore it and you ignore it, and then finally it's like, okay, I'm going to listen, But I think the big thing to remember is that we all have a contract to come here. One thing I will say is that Dane, whenever he came through, I think the second time with Erica, he said he was supposed to die at the age of 17. But the difference was that he and my other son were going to be in a vehicle together. And my other son would have been driving, and he would have crashed the vehicle, and Dane would have died. But my other son would have been disabled as a result of that. So it's almost like Dane sacrificed himself. Like he had a moment of clarity, maybe when he was tripping, I don't know. But like he had a moment of clarity, and he chose to take his life versus, continue on the path and have that accident.
Now, when you talk about soul contracts, what you're saying is we all sign we sign on to our path before we get here, you know, and something in life can be difficult, and it is kind of confusing when you start thinking in these terms, like, why would we be born on this earth, and do you sign this contract that my son is going to pass away at the age of 17? You know, that's kind of difficult. But when you start looking into these things and you start seeing it from a different perspective, you realize that it's really all one big plan. And in this middle realm that we live in, we come down here to learn lessons to take back with us, to enrich our soul with lessons, you know, and we'll keep coming back, and we'll keep coming back. You know, I'm very confident in my crazy. You know,
Or
very,
even,
very
you know, even your sister took, you know, did the contract of being an addiction, you know, going down that path. That's something that she chose too, you know, and that's what's so difficult is, why would you do that? Why would you choose that difficult path? And in fact, even today I was talking to Spirit. I'm like, okay, guys, I don't know if I ever said I wanted a stroke or anything. I said, I don't want a stroke. I don't want anything else to happen. I just kind of want to, you know, I've had enough. Let me just do this. And let's, you know, whatever contract I had, can I renegotiate and say, I don't want anything. I want to just, you know, do what I'm supposed to do for you, and then check out long and at the end, you know.
Yeah. Well, this was obviously our soul path to experience the loss of a sibling and the loss of children. Yeah, so I don't know what I was thinking choosing this, but
I know.
Well, it's
Like, why would you?
but they're helping us on our journey too.
You know, that's where the bigger picture comes into hand. You know, when I was going through shamanism, you know, I was in a real dark place, you know, before shamanism. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, you know.
Right.
And I started going through this thing, and it released all the traumas I've ever had in my life. And I just realized that everything I've ever went through was literally to help me understand the people I'm supposed to heal. So I just consider myself very fortunate for the source of energy, you know, God, if you will. I don't like to put a gender on it, you know, but to be able to live this path to heal others, because others who aren't in tune with it, they might find it more difficult to grieve, you know.
Right.
I that's one of the hardest moments in my life, was when all the worst things, all my worst traumas came out to me in that exact moment. I felt like my soul was going to cry, you know. And at that exact moment, I got a smile on my face. I'm like, oh, I lived all this stuff literally so I can understand the people I'm supposed to help. And that's great about mediumship, and great about being a medium, is you are bringing so much closure and, you know, so much relief to people for suffering these lost ones, that we did sign up to come here. And not, when we come here, we are granted free will, you know. So it's basically like, you know, it's like the Men in Black, you know, where they give you that the little thing where they like
The flashy thing.
Yeah, they erase your mind. It's like what happens to you. You know, you're up in the spirit realm. You're already so connected. You already know all these things. You know, you made this choice, and you come down here and you just completely forget about it. And it's like part of your path to get connected, you know, again, and realize these things. And
it's funny that you say that we forget, which we do, but I feel like the soul knows when they have an early death. I feel like my son, I mean, there was a lot of weird things when I look back on it, that it's almost like he knew he wasn't going to live to be old.
But yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was done. I just feel like on some level the soul knows.
Oh, I'm sure. But going back to the soul contract, you know, some people would say, well, how do we have these people who do these just evil things in this world? And what you have to realize is that goes back to your free will. And when they die and have to review their life, that's where karma comes in. So if they were an abuser, they will be someone who is abused when they come back. That's how they repay for that karma that they put out there and you know, put into the world.
and that gets into what you're saying is like a lot of earthbound souls. And for those who are watching this who don't know, they don't know what an earthbound soul is. That's someone who has crossed over. And I've had a lot of experiences with earthbound souls, and it actually is a lot of that dogma. The majority of the time, it's dogma that they're going to go to hell if they try to cross over. So they stay here for a long time, you know, in most cases. And it's actually, it doesn't work like that. We don't go there. We all go to the same place, but it might be different. You know, if you are just a horrible person, it might be, one instance, it might be your free will, and you're going to go back and you're going to review and you're going to come back and you're going to pay for those things, you know. And also it's like you that's part of your contract too, you know. Like if you come down here and you're just very horrible to people, you're going to come back and, you know, people are just going to be horrible to you and stuff like that. So it's also, you know, the world would be a much better place if everybody understood these things, you know, and realize that we are all connected as one. The only thing that separates us is the fear, the anger, the hatred, and everything that we are, you know, that people share. But
with those crossover souls, one thing that a medium can do is they have this ability, they're blessed with this gift to be able to help those souls cross over. That kind of, like they say, lead them into the light.
That's another thing. That's another thing that is great about mediumship and about being a medium. We don't always only deal with the crossed over souls. You know, we deal with earthbounds too. And you know, my mom knows as well as I do that I'm like, you know, been an earthbound magnet my entire life. You know, and people come into my life path that have these souls that are around them. And I've had experiences with crossing over souls, and I've had experiences with people that are close to me that have lost loved ones who were in my lifetime earthbound spirits and have crossed over, you know. And I mean, it's all about messages, really. You know, it's about spreading these messages to these loved ones that they're in a great place and they want you to be in a great place, and you can't live your entire life grieving over the loss of a loved one, because they just want you to move on. They want you to move on and know that they're there and they're actually taking care of you and they're watching you all the time and they're always there whenever you need them, you know. And
they're cheering you on. And
they're cheering you on. Yeah. And if you could learn how to like let go and lose the fear, you could be more connected with them and you can see the signs, you know, and maybe it's in part of your path to be able to help other people as well.
I know initially I felt guilty, even having a good time or laughing, or, you know, I felt guilty, like I should be grieving still. But then I realized he doesn't want to see me sad and suffering, you know.
But that will come back. I think that's the other thing too, that people have to recognize that your grief is your own, and you're going to have moments where, you know, it's like a whole weekend of just feeling really down, and, you know, and sometimes you feel up and you feel a little guilty about it. And, you know, but you'll have those ups and downs. And I think the biggest thing is that this is your journey. And nobody can tell you what to do, how to do it, and when it's going to happen and when it ends. Just do it. Just go for it. Just be you.
Yeah. So anybody out there, you know, I hope people are drawn to this, you know, and many other any kind of avenue to seek out guidance if they really need it. Don't sit with that loss, you know, for the rest of your life, because that's the last thing that they want you to do is just grieve over them for the rest of your life and destroy yourself. You know, that's they don't want that. When you start understanding these things, then you understand that being a human being down in this physical realm is a very beautiful thing, because down here we get free will, you know. We get the opportunities to create, to learn our own lessons in life and take it back with us, you know. So unless anybody has anything to add, you know, I very much appreciate all of you coming on today and sharing your experiences. with us very beautiful stories, you know, and I hope that anybody who watches this will, if they're still in a, you know, grieving of a loss, that they know where they can go to seek out healing messages. You know, I very much implore you to do that, and please don't sit, you know, don't sit with that loss forever, you know, because that's the last thing that you should do. You know, there, you can become connected with your lost loved ones in this realm.
I agree. It doesn't fix it, but it certainly makes it livable and brings a lot of comfort.
In a
Yeah,
lot of ways, it brings closure. Like it gives you, just like I said, I wasn't able to see her, you know, really talk to my daughter in the 3 years before she passed. So, you know, having this gives me some closure in that I'm not completely lost of her and that she is now in a good place.
absolutely. You know, and fortunate for us, we get to basically pay it forward.
Hmm.
Thank
So
you, Damien, for
Thank
having
you.
us on here.
thank you for coming. You know, I really enjoyed it. All right, you guys have a wonderful night and have a great
Thanks.
rest of your weekend.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Right.